Ayanna Brooks clutched her small suitcase as she stood at the iron gates of Oakwood Estate. The sprawling mansion loomed ahead, its stone walls reflecting the warm Georgia sunset. 6 months ago, she'd been finishing her master's thesis. Now, she was here about to become a live-in maid. Just temporary, she whispered to herself. 6 months of paychecks and you can start over. The security guard checked her ID and waved her through. Ayanna pulled her jacket tighter, feeling the weight of everything she'd lost. Her mother's funeral had drained her savings. The breakup had drained her spirit. And dropping out of grad school had drained her hope. Miss Brooks, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, greeted her at the front door. "I'm Mrs. Winters, the house manager. You're late." "I'm sorry, the bus. Excuses don't clean rooms." Mrs. Winters led her inside. "You'll work 6 days a week. Your quarters are in the East Wing. Mr. Cole values his privacy above all else. You are never to enter the West Wing unless specifically instructed." Ayanna nodded, only half listening, as she took in the massive foyer. Marble floors, crystal chandelier, a curved staircase that seemed to float upward. "Most importantly," Mrs. Winters continued, "Mr. Cole rarely interacts with staff. If you see him, be invisible. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. You start tomorrow at 5 a.m. As Ayanna followed Mrs. Winters to her room, she wondered what kind of man owned a house this beautiful, but wanted to be alone in it. Her quarters were small but comfortable, a single bed, a dresser, a tiny bathroom, better than her apartment had been after she couldn't make rent. Ayanna unpacked her few belongings and sat on the bed. 6 months, she reminded herself. Just 6 months. That night she dreamed of college, of poetry readings and midnight walks, of a boy with kind eyes who traced dreams on her skin. The first week passed in a blur of dusting, mopping, and polishing. Ayanna learned the rhythms of the house. Breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Mrs. Winters inspected every room with hawk-like precision. "You missed a spot," she'd say, pointing to invisible dust. Ayanna would simply nod and clean it again. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. On her 8th day, while cleaning the library, Ayanna froze. There, on the middle shelf, was a worn copy of Langston Hughes' poetry, the same edition she'd once read aloud from on lazy Sunday mornings. She reached for it, her heart pounding. That shelf needs special attention. Ayanna spun around. Mrs. Winters stood in the doorway watching. "Yes, ma'am?" Ayanna quickly resumed dusting. That night, lying in bed, Ayanna couldn't stop thinking about that book. What were the chances? It had to be a coincidence. The next day she found another coincidence, a vinyl record of Nina Simone, her mother's favorite. And the day after that, a painting of the Georgia coast where she'd once dreamed of living. It was as if the house was filled with ghosts of her past. "Who is Mr. Cole?" she finally asked Rosa, the cook. Rosa shrugged. "Some tech genius. Made millions before 30. Barely leaves the West Wing." "Has he always lived here?" "Bought it 2 years ago. Had it completely redesigned. Mrs. Winters says he's particular about everything." "Why? You seen him?" Ayanna shook her head. "Just curious." That afternoon, while cleaning the main hall, Ayanna heard piano music floating from the West Wing. She paused, listening. The melody was haunting, familiar somehow. The music stopped abruptly. A door opened. Ayanna quickly turned back to her mopping, keeping her head down. Footsteps approached, then stopped. "You're new," the voice. Deep, smooth like aged bourbon. A voice she'd know anywhere. Slowly, Ayanna raised her head. Time stopped. Julian. Cole stood 10 feet away, taller than she remembered. His face more angular, his eyes harder, but unmistakably him. "Julian," she whispered. He went completely still. The color drained from his face. "Ayanna." Her name on his lips made her knees weak. She gripped the mop handle tighter. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Before she could answer, Mrs. Winters appeared. "Mr. Cole, I apologize for the disturbance. Brooks, back to work." Julian's eyes never left Ayanna's face. "It's fine, Mrs. Winters, He seemed unable to finish the thought. "Sir, your conference call starts in 5 minutes, Mrs. Winters reminded him. Julian nodded, still staring at Ayanna. Then, As if waking from a trance, he turned and walked away. Ayanna stood frozen, her heart thundering in her chest. Julian. Her Julian. The boy who'd promised her forever, then vanished without a word. The boy whose silence had broken her. Now the man who signed her paychecks. Ayanna couldn't sleep that night. She paced her small room, replaying the moment over and over. The shock. In his eyes, her name on his lips. Why was he here? Why was she here? What cruel joke was the universe playing? She needed this job. She had nowhere else to go. But how could she stay now? Morning came too soon. Ayanna went through her cleaning. Routine like a zombie. Every corner, every hallway, she expected to see him again. But Julian was gone. Mrs. Winters informed the staff he'd left for a business trip. Probably for the best, Rosa said when they were alone. What was that yesterday? You know him? Ayanna hesitated. I thought I did. Once. Rosa gave her a knowing look but didn't push. 3 days passed. Julian remained away. Ayanna continued cleaning, but now she looked at the house differently. This wasn't some random mansion. Julian had designed this place, and it was filled with pieces of her. On Friday, while dusting the study, Ayanna noticed a desk drawer slightly ajar. She should have closed it and moved on. Instead, she pulled it open. Letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to her. With trembling hands, she picked one up. The postmark was from 6 years ago, just after he'd disappeared. Ayanna, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if I'll even send it. But I need to write the words, even if they never reach you. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to leave. I never wanted to hurt you. When my father showed me your letter, it nearly killed me. But I understand why you had to go. I understand why you couldn't wait anymore. I just wish you'd told me to my face. I keep thinking about that last night together. Did you already know you were leaving? Was that goodbye? I replay every moment, looking for signs I missed. I love you. I've always loved you. I think I always will. Julian. Ayanna sank into the desk chair, stunned. Letter? What letter? She'd never written any letter. She grabbed another envelope. Ayanna, it's been a month. I drove by your mother's house today. Your car was gone. Mrs. Johnson. Next door said you'd moved. She wouldn't tell me where. I deserved that, I guess. My father says I need to move on, focus on my future. He's arranged a position at a tech firm in California. I leave tomorrow. I don't know how to move on from you. Julian. Tears blurred Ayanna's vision. This made no sense. She'd never left him. He had disappeared, stopped coming to classes, stopped answering his phone. His roommate had said he'd moved out overnight. She'd spent weeks looking for him. Called his parents' house only to be told. Julian didn't want to speak to her. She reached for a third letter, dated a year later. Ayanna, I saw someone who looked like you today. Same walk, same way of tucking hair behind her ear. For a second, my heart stopped. It wasn't you. I've tried dating. My father keeps introducing me to suitable women, daughters of business partners, Harvard graduates, women with the right background, the right connections. None of them are you. I made my first million today. I should be celebrating. Instead, I bought that Langston Hughes book you loved and read it until sunrise, hearing your voice in every line. Where are you now? Are you happy? Did you finish your degree? Are you teaching somewhere, inspiring students with your passion for literature? Are you with someone who deserves you? I hope you're happy. I hope you've forgotten me. I haven't forgotten a single moment with you. Julian. What are you doing? Ayanna jumped, the letter falling from her hands. Julian stood in the doorway, his face a mask of fury and pain. I'm sorry, the drawer was open and You had no right. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, gathering the letters and shoving them back in the drawer. Julian. Mr. Cole, he corrected coldly. I'm your employer, not your friend. The word stung like a slap. Ayanna straightened her shoulders. Fine, Mr. Cole, but I think we need to talk about... There's nothing to talk about. What's done is done. But the letters. You mentioned my letter, but I never... Don't. His voice cracked slightly. Please don't pretend now. It was a long time ago. Ayanna felt anger rising. Pretend? You're the one who left. You disappeared. No calls, no explanation. Nothing. Julian stared at her in disbelief. I left? You're the one who wrote that you needed space, that we wanted different things, that it was better to make a clean break. What are you talking about? I never wrote any letter. They stood facing each other, both breathing hard, both confused. My father showed me your letter, Julian said slowly. Your handwriting, your signature. Ayana shook her head. I never wrote you a letter, Julian. You just vanished. I looked for you for weeks. Doubt flickered in Julian's eyes. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Ayana's chest ache. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. No, it doesn't. A heavy silence fell between them. I should go, Ayana finally said, gesturing to her cleaning cart. Julian nodded, distracted. Yes. We both have work. Ayana turned to leave. Ayana. She paused, not looking back. Dinner. In my study, 8 o'clock. We need to figure this out. It wasn't a request. Ayana nodded once and left, her mind reeling. Ayana spent the rest of the day in a fog. Julian thought she'd written him a goodbye letter. She thought he'd abandoned her. Someone was lying. Or someone had lied to them both. At 7:55, she changed into her only nice outfit, a simple blue dress, and made her way to Julian's study. She hesitated before knocking. Come in, his voice called. Julian stood by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He'd changed into a black sweater and dark jeans. The formal businessman was gone, replaced by a glimpse of the boy she'd once known. Sit, he said, gesturing to 2 armchairs by the fireplace. Ayana sat, smoothing her dress nervously. Julian remained standing. I've been thinking about this all day. None of it makes sense. No, it doesn't. Tell me what happened. From your perspective. Ayana took a deep breath. We were happy. At least I thought we were. Then one day you didn't show up for our coffee date. You didn't answer your phone. When I went to your apartment, your roommate said you'd moved out. Overnight, all your things were gone. Julian frowned. Go on. I called your parents' house. Your father answered. He said you didn't want to speak to me, that you'd moved on and I should too. The memory still hurt. I tried for weeks to reach you. Eventually, I had to accept you were gone. Julian's face had gone pale. That's not what happened. Then what did happen? He sat down heavily in the chair opposite her. My father came to my apartment one night. He had a letter, your handwriting. It said you needed space, that we wanted different things, that it was better to make a clean break before graduation. I never wrote that, Ayana insisted. He said you dropped it off that afternoon. Julian's eyes searched hers. I was devastated. I called you, but your roommate said you were out. I called again the next day and she said you didn't want to talk to me. Melissa said that. She never told me you called. Julian set his glass down hard. My father suggested I finish the semester at home, focus on the job offers I had lined up. When I tried calling you again, your number was disconnected. I lost my phone that week. Had to get a new number. Ayana's mind was racing. Julian, someone manipulated us. My father, he said quietly. It had to be. The pieces were falling into place. Julian's father had never approved of their relationship. He'd made comments about Julian's future, about suitable partners. But why would Melissa lie about me not wanting to talk to you? Julian looked away. Money, probably. My father is persuasive. The implications sank in. Someone had deliberately torn them apart. 6 years of pain and misunderstanding. 6 years they couldn't get back. Why would he do that? Ayana whispered. Control. My future. The Cole legacy. Julian's laugh was bitter. He paid for my education. He thought that gave him the right to direct my life. And now? Now I haven't spoken to him in 3 years. Not since I made my first real success without his help. They sat in silence, absorbing the truth. What happens now? Ayana finally asked. Julian looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time that night. I don't know. I have years of anger and hurt. I'm not the same person you knew, neither am I. You're working as my maid, Ayana. How did that happen? You were going to be a professor. Write books. Ayana looked down at her hands. Life happened. My mum got sick, cancer. I dropped out to care for her. After she died, there were medical bills. I tried going back to school, but—" She shrugged. "I ran out of money. Ran out of options." Julian's face softened. "I'm sorry about your mom. She was always kind to me. She liked you. Asked about you even after—" Ayana couldn't finish. Another silence fell, less tense than before. "I should go," Ayana finally said, standing. Julian stood too. "What about your job? I can't imagine this is comfortable for you now." "I need the work," she admitted. "I don't have anywhere else to go right now." He nodded slowly. "Stay then. We'll figure this out." At the door, Ayana paused. "Did you mean what you wrote? In those letters?" Julian's eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw the boy she'd loved. Vulnerable. Honest. Every word. Ayana nodded and left, closing the door softly behind her. In her small room, she sat on the edge of her bed, overwhelmed. Julian hadn't abandoned her. He'd thought she'd left him. All these years of pain based on a lie, and now they were here. In the same house, strangers who once knew each other's souls. Ayana didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So she did both, until exhaustion finally pulled her into sleep. The next morning, a note waited outside her door. "Take the day off. We'll talk more when you're ready." Jayana held the note, tracing his handwriting with her finger. The same strong, slanted script from the letters. She spent the day walking the grounds of Oakwood Estate, trying to process everything. The garden was beautiful, full of roses and magnolias. She found a stone bench by a small pond and sat, watching dragonflies skim the water. "I thought I might find you here." Julian approached, hands in his pockets. He looked more relaxed today, in jeans and a grey t-shirt. "You always did love gardens," he said, sitting beside her, leaving space between them. "You remember that?" He smiled slightly. "I remember everything, Ayana." The admission hung in the air between them. "I called my father this morning," Julian finally said. Ayana tensed. "And?" "He denied everything, of course, but he got defensive when I mentioned the letter. Said he did what was necessary for my future." Julian's jaw tightened. "He tried to justify it. Said you would have held me back." "From what?" "From becoming exactly what he wanted. Another version of himself." Julian looked out over the pond. "The irony is I became successful despite him, not because of him." "I'm sorry he did that to us," Julian nodded. "I've spent 6 years angry at you, building walls, throwing myself into work." He turned to look at her. "And now I find out it was all based on a lie." "What do we do now?" Ayana asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "We can't go back. Too much time has passed. We're different people now." "Yes, we are." Julian seemed to be struggling with something. Finally, he said, "I have a proposition. I'm listening. You need work. I need a personal assistant. Someone to manage my schedule, correspondence, household matters. Mrs. Winters is good, but she's traditional. I need someone who thinks differently." Ayana raised an eyebrow. "You want to promote me from maid to assistant? Is that so strange?" "It feels like charity," Julian frowned. "It's not. You were always brilliant, organized. You understand people in a way I never have. That's valuable to me professionally." Ayana considered it. The position would pay better, give her breathing room, time to figure out her next move. "What about—" She gestured between them. "This? Our history?" Julian's expression turned guarded. "Professionally, we work together. Personally, we take it one day at a time, learn who we are now. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start." "Okay," Ayana said. "I accept." Julian nodded, a hint of relief in his eyes. "Good. You start Monday. Mrs. Winters will show you your new office." He stood to leave, then hesitated. "Ayana?" "Yes?" "I'm glad you're here, even if it's complicated." Before she could respond, he walked away, leaving her alone with the dragonflies and her thoughts. That night, Ayana found another note slipped under her door. Inside was a key. "The library is always open. The books missed you." Jayana held the key to her chest, tears threatening again. 6 years of misunderstanding couldn't be fixed in a day, but maybe, just maybe, they could build something new from the dust of what they'd lost. She just wasn't sure if her heart could survive loving and losing Julian Cole twice in one lifetime. Monday morning arrived with a soft knock on Ayana's door. Mrs. Winters stood there, lips pressed into a thin line. "Mr. Cole has informed me of your promotion," she said, making the word sound like an insult. "Come with me to your new office." Ayana followed the older woman through the east wing, past the rooms she'd been cleaning just days before. They turned down a hallway she hadn't been allowed to enter. "This connects to Mr. Cole's private wing," Mrs. Winters explained stiffly. "Your office is here." She opened a door to reveal a spacious room with large windows overlooking the garden. A sleek desk faced the door with a computer, phone, and leather chair. Bookshelves lined one wall, still empty. "Mr. Cole will brief you on your duties. Your new living quarters are through that door." Mrs. Winters pointed to a door on the right. "Your things have been moved." "Thank you," Ayana said. Mrs. Winters didn't leave. "I've worked for the Cole family for 30 years, Ms. Brooks. I knew Julian's mother before she passed. I've watched him grow up." Ayana waited, sensing there was more. "He's not the same since he came back from college. Whatever happened between you two, Mrs. Winters," Julian's voice cut in from the doorway. "That will be all." The house manager nodded curtly and left, closing the door behind her. Julian leaned against the doorframe, watching Ayana. He wore a charcoal suit today, looking every inch the successful businessman. "Don't mind her," he said. "She's protective. I noticed." Ayana ran her hand along the desk. "This is a big change from a mop and bucket. You were never meant to be cleaning floors." The statement hung between them, loaded with unspoken history. Julian straightened. "All business now. Your duties will include managing my calendar, correspondence, and some household matters. I have meetings in Atlanta 3 days a week. You'll coordinate with my driver, Thomas." Ayana nodded, trying to look professional despite the strangeness of it all. "I have investors coming tomorrow. There's a file on your computer with everything you need to know." Julian hesitated. "And Ayana?" "Yes?" "Your quarters connect to mine through the library for convenience, but I've had a separate entrance added for privacy." Their eyes met, acknowledging the awkwardness of their situation. "Thank you," she said simply. Julian nodded and left, leaving behind the scent of his cologne, different from the one he'd worn in college, but somehow still familiar. Ayana sank into her chair, overwhelmed. A week ago, she'd been mopping floors. Now she had an office, a new job, and her ex-boyfriend as her boss, the ex-boyfriend who, according to his letters, had never stopped loving her. The new living quarters were nothing like her small maid's room. A spacious bedroom with a queen-sized bed, a private bathroom with a tub big enough to soak in, a sitting area with a comfortable couch and TV, and a door that led to the library. After exploring her new space, Ayana turned on the computer and found the file Julian had mentioned. She spent the afternoon familiarizing herself with his schedule, the upcoming investor meeting, and her responsibilities. At 6, a knock came at her door. She expected Julian, but found Rosa instead, carrying a dinner tray. "Figured you might be too busy to come down," the cook said, setting the tray on a small table. "How's the new job?" "Overwhelming," Ayana admitted. Rosa smiled knowingly. "Quite a change. Yesterday a maid, today practically running the house." "I wouldn't say that." "Oh, honey, that's exactly what you'll be doing. Mr. Cole may be a genius with computers, but he needs someone to manage everything else." Rosa paused. "Mrs. Winters is in a state about it. Says he's never trusted anyone with his business before." After Rosa left, Ayana ate while reviewing Julian's calendar for the next day. He had breakfast meetings, conference calls, and the investor. Dinner in the evening. As she worked, curiosity pulled at her. The library door was just across the room, the key burning a hole in her pocket. Finally, she gave in. The heavy wooden door opened silently to reveal the magnificent library she'd cleaned just days ago, but now from a different angle. Moonlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating shelves of books from floor to ceiling. Ayana moved quietly, running her fingers along the spines. So many of her favorites were here. Shakespeare, Morrison, Angelo, Baldwin. "I thought you might come tonight." Julian's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway on the opposite side, the one that must lead to his quarters. He'd changed out of his suit into a black t-shirt and sweatpants, looking more like the college boy she'd known. I didn't mean to intrude, Ayana said. You're not. Julian crossed to a cabinet and pulled out 2 glasses. Drink? It might help. With all the changes. Ayana nodded and he poured them each a measure of amber liquid. To new beginnings, he said, handing her a glass. New beginnings, she echoed, sipping the whiskey. It burned pleasantly down her throat. They stood awkwardly for a moment before Julian gestured to a seating area with 2 leather armchairs. I used to imagine you here, he said once they were seated, reading in that chair by the window. It was stupid, I know, but when I designed this house, you thought of me, Ayana finished for him. Julian looked down at his glass. I thought of little else. The admission made her heart flutter traitorously. Julian, we can't just pick up where we left off. Too much has happened. I know, he met her eyes. But don't you want answers? Don't you want to know exactly what happened? Ayana did. The question had haunted her for years. I've been thinking about the timeline, Julian continued. The supposed letter came right after spring break of senior year. When we went to that cabin in the mountains, Ayana remembered. Your father called constantly. He wanted me to intern at his friend's firm. I told him I had other plans with you. Ayana remembered how happy they'd been that week, making plans for after graduation. Julian had talked about a tech startup. He wanted to join. She'd been considering PhD programs. He must have realized we were serious, Julian said. That's when he decided to intervene. But how did he fake a letter from me, and why would Melissa lie about me not wanting to talk to you? Julian sighed heavily. Melissa was always short on money, and my father... He trailed off, looking troubled. What? He would have had your handwriting. From your scholarship application to the Cole Foundation, realization dawned on Ayana. The application your father insisted I fill out by hand, even though everything was digital by then. Julian nodded grimly. He planned it all. The magnitude of the betrayal settled over them. 6 years lost to one man's manipulation. What about your roommate? Ayana asked. The one who told me you'd moved out overnight. Chad, Julian frowned. He was on my father's payroll too, apparently. Got a job at one of my father's companies right after graduation. They sat in silence, processing it all. I'm sorry, Julian finally said. I should have questioned it. Should have tried harder to find you. We both believed what we were told, Ayana said softly. We were young. Julian leaned forward. But we're not young anymore. We don't have to let him win. Their eyes met and the air between them crackled with something Ayana wasn't ready to name. I should go, she said, standing abruptly. Big day tomorrow. Julian stood too. Of course. Get some rest. At the door to her quarters, Ayana paused. Julian, thank you for the library key. His smile was small but genuine. It was always yours. The next morning was a whirlwind. Ayana coordinated Julian's breakfast meeting, prepared documents for his conference calls, and arranged details for the investor dinner. She was surprised by how quickly she adapted to the role. Organization had always been her strength, and Julian's business world, while new to her, followed logical patterns. At noon, Julian appeared in her doorway. How's it going? Good, Ayana replied, surprised by the truth of it. I've confirmed the dinner reservations and arranged for Thomas to pick up the investors from their hotel. Julian nodded, looking impressed. Better than good. You're a natural. The compliment warmed her, but she kept her expression professional. Will you need me at the dinner? Yes, actually. These investors are bringing their wives. It would help to have another person there, especially someone who can read people as well as you can. Ayana hesitated. I don't have anything appropriate to wear. Julian waved a hand dismissively. There's a boutique in town. Thomas can take you this afternoon. Get whatever you need. My account. Julian. It's a business expense, he said firmly. Your clothes are part of the job. Ayana wanted to argue but recognized the practicality. She couldn't show up to an investor dinner in her one blue dress. All right. Thank you. Julian lingered in the doorway. I meant to ask, how are your new quarters? Comfortable. Very. It's more luxury than I've had in years. Something flickered in Julian's eyes. Sadness, perhaps, at the reminder of how their lives had diverged. I'll see you tonight, then. Thomas will be ready at 2. After he left, Ayana sat back in her chair. troubled by the ease with which she was slipping into this new life. It felt unreal, like stepping into a dream she'd abandoned years ago. The boutique was small but exclusive. The saleswoman, Nadia, helped Ayana select an elegant black dress, simple yet sophisticated. "Your first dinner with Mr. Cole?" Nadia asked as Ayana tried on shoes. "I'm his assistant," Ayana clarified. "It's a business dinner." Nadia raised an eyebrow. "Of course. We just don't often see Mr. Cole's staff shopping here." Ayana ignored the implication. "These will work," she said, selecting a pair of heels. When Thomas drove her back to the estate, Ayana noticed another car in the driveway, a sleek silver Bentley she hadn't seen before. Mrs. Winters met her at the door, looking agitated. "Mr. Cole wants you in his office immediately." Ayana set her shopping bags down. "Is everything all right?" "No," Mrs. Winters said tersely. "Mr. Cole Sr. is here." Ayana's stomach dropped. Julian's father, the man who had destroyed their relationship. She found Julian in his office, standing by the window. He turned when she entered, his face tight with tension. "My father is here," he said without preamble. "So I heard." "Why?" Julian's laugh was humorless. "Apparently one of his friends is an investor in my new project. He invited himself to dinner." "Does he know I'm here?" "Not yet, and I'd like to keep it that way, at least until after dinner." Julian ran a hand through his hair. "I know it's asking a lot, but you want me to pretend we don't know each other," Ayana finished for him, "just for tonight. I can't afford to lose these investors, and my father could sabotage the whole deal if he realizes who you are." The request stung, but Ayana understood the practicality. "All right, tonight I'm just your assistant." Julian's relief was palpable. "Thank you. He's staying in the guest wing. I'll try to keep him away from the house until dinner." "And after dinner?" Julian's eyes hardened. "After dinner, I'm going to confront him with you." Ayana spent the afternoon in her quarters, getting ready for the dinner while trying to process the fact that she would soon face the man who had torn her life apart. She styled her hair in an elegant updo, applied makeup carefully, and put on the new black dress. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Gone was the college girl with dreams of academia. Gone was the exhausted maid from a week ago. The woman staring back at her was polished, composed, and angry. At 7, she met Julian in the foyer. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, his tie the exact shade of blue she'd always loved on him. "You look—" He trailed off, his eyes taking her in. "Professional?" Ayana supplied. "Beautiful," Julian corrected softly. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching voices interrupted them. Julian straightened, his expression closing off. "Remember, just my assistant," he murmured. Ayana nodded, squaring her shoulders. A moment later, a group entered the foyer. 3 men in expensive suits, 2 women in designer dresses, and at the center, William Cole. He looked older than Ayana remembered, his hair now silver at the temples, but his eyes were the same, calculating, cold. "Julian," he greeted his son with a firm handshake. "Good to see you." Julian's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Father, welcome. You remember Mr. Patterson and Mr. Lee?" As introductions continued, William Cole's gaze landed on Ayana. There was no recognition in his eyes, just the dismissive glance of a man accustomed to overlooking staff. "And this is Ms. Brooks, my personal assistant," Julian said smoothly. "Charmed," William said without interest. Ayana forced a polite smile. "Likewise, Mr. Cole." Dinner was served in the formal dining room. Ayana sat at Julian's right, taking notes when needed, speaking only when addressed directly. The conversation revolved around Julian's new tech venture, something involving secure communication systems. William Cole dominated the discussion, clearly trying to establish himself as integral to the deal. "My son has always had vision," he told the investors. "Even in college, I knew he was destined for greatness. That's why I steered him away from distractions." Julian's knuckles whitened around his fork, but his voice remained even. "Father has always been involved in my career. Choices, someone had to be," William laughed. "You were ready to throw it all away for some scholarship girl." The table fell awkwardly silent. Ayana kept her eyes down, heart pounding. "Perhaps business talk can wait until after dessert," Julian suggested smoothly, changing the subject. Throughout the meal, Ayanna could feel Julian's tension radiating beside her. She also noticed something else. William Cole watching his son with a calculating expression whenever Julian wasn't looking. After dinner, the group moved to the library for drinks. Ayanna circulated with coffee and brandy, playing her part. When she offered the tray to William Cole, he finally looked at her properly. "Have we met before, Miss Brooks?" he asked, studying her face. "I don't believe so, sir," Ayanna replied calmly. "You seem familiar somehow. I have one of those faces, I suppose." William continued to stare, something like suspicion dawning in his eyes. But before he could say more, Julian called for everyone's attention to discuss the investment details. The evening stretched on. By 10, contracts had been signed, hands shaken, and the investors were preparing to leave. "Thomas will drive you back to your hotel," Julian told them as they gathered in the foyer. William Cole lingered. "I thought I might stay the night, son." "We have catching up to do." Julian's face revealed nothing. "Of course, your room is ready." After the investors left, Julian turned to Ayanna. "Good work tonight. Why don't you get some rest?" The message was clear. "Not now, not yet." "Of course. Good night, Mr. Cole." She nodded politely to William. "Mr. Cole Sr." In her quarters, Ayanna paced restlessly. She could hear muffled voices from Julian's office, the conversation growing heated, then quieting again. Around midnight, a soft knock came at her door. Julian stood there, looking exhausted. "He knows," he said simply. "How?" "He kept pressing about where I found such a competent assistant. I was vague, but he's not stupid." Julian sighed. "He's pretending to be pleased. Said something about being glad I got you out of my system in college." Ayanna winced. "Charming. He's staying through tomorrow, wants to see the operation." Julian leaned against the doorframe. "I'm sorry about tonight, making you serve drinks to the man who ruined our lives." "It was worth it to see those contracts signed," Ayanna said. "This project is important to you." Julian nodded, his eyes softening. "You always did understand what mattered to me." The moment stretched between them, taut with unspoken feelings. "Get some sleep," Ayanna finally said. "Tomorrow will be interesting." Julian reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her cheek. "You were amazing tonight." "Thank you." After he left, Ayanna touched the spot where his fingers had been, her skin tingling. The next morning, Ayanna was reviewing emails when her office door opened. William Cole stood there, looking at her with naked contempt. "I knew I recognized you," he said without preamble. "Ayanna Brooks, the girl who nearly derailed my son's future." Ayanna stood, refusing to be intimidated. "Mr. Cole, I was wondering when we'd have this conversation. What are you doing here? What's your angle?" "I work for your son, that's all." William snorted in disbelief. "Julian could hire anyone. Why you?" "That's a question for him, isn't it?" William took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Listen carefully. Julian has worked too hard to throw everything away on some nostalgia trip. Whatever you think might happen between you two, it won't. He's not the same lovesick boy you knew. You would know all about that, wouldn't you?" Ayanna kept her voice steady. "Since you're the one who made sure we were torn apart." William didn't even bother to deny it. "I did what was necessary. Julian needed to focus on his future, not waste his potential on a girl with nothing to offer the Cole name. Except love. Except honesty." Ayanna stepped around her desk to face him directly. "Things you wouldn't understand." Something dangerous flashed in William's eyes. "You think you know my son? The man he's become? He's ruthless now, cold, successful, everything I wanted him to be." "No thanks to you," Julian's voice cut in from the doorway. William turned, unfazed by his son's arrival. "Julian, I was just having a fascinating chat with your assistant." "I heard." Julian's voice was ice. "You've never been very good at keeping your voice down when you're threatening people." "Not threatening, just clarifying the situation." William straightened his tie. "You've built something impressive here, son. Don't jeopardize it for old mistakes." Julian crossed the room to stand beside Ayanna. The only mistake was believing you had my best interests at heart. William's expression hardened. I've always done what's best for you, for the Cole legacy. You did what was best for yourself, Julian countered. You controlled my education, my career path, even my relationships, but not anymore. Don't be dramatic, William scoffed. Everything you have, this house, your company, your success, you have because of me. No, Julian said quietly. I have it despite you. The two men stared at each other, neither willing to back down. I think it's time for you to leave, Julian finally said. William looked between Julian and Ayanna, his lip curling. So that's how it is. You've chosen her again. I'm choosing myself, Julian corrected. Something I should have done years ago. William reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, setting it on Ayanna's desk. When this falls apart, and it will call me, I'll make it worth your while to disappear again. With that parting shot, he left. Moments later, they heard the front door slam. Julian let out a long breath. Well, that went about as expected. Ayanna picked up the card, then tore it in half. Charming family tradition, paying people to leave your life. Julian winced. I'm sorry you had to deal with him. I'm not. Ayanna surprised herself with the strength in her voice. 6 years ago I never got to face him. Never knew why you disappeared, at least now I have answers. Julian moved to the window, watching his father's car pull away. He'll try to sabotage the deal. Can he? He can try. But the contracts are signed and my investors know my track record. Julian turned back to her. I'm more concerned about you. He's not going to stop. I'm not afraid of him. Julian's expression softened. You never were afraid of much. That's one of the things I always loved about you. The word hung between them. Loved. Past tense, yet somehow still alive in the air. Julian. I know. He cut her off gently. It's complicated. We're different people now. But standing here with you, fighting my father together, it feels familiar, Ayanna finished. Like no time has passed at all. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them. Not quite forgiveness, not quite reconciliation, but a step towards something new. Julian's phone rang, breaking the moment. It's the Atlanta office. I need to take this. Go ahead. I have work to finish anyway. After Julian left, Ayanna sat at her desk, thoughts swirling. William Cole had confirmed everything they'd suspected. He'd deliberately separated them, manipulated their lives for his own purposes, and now he was threatening to do it again. That evening, Ayanna found Julian in the library, nursing a whiskey in the dark. Rough day? She asked, joining him. My father called the investors, Julian confirmed. Tried to raise doubts about the project timeline. Did it work? Julian shook his head. Not this time, but he won't stop. They sat in companionable silence for a while. What happened after college? Ayanna finally asked. Your letters mentioned California. Julian nodded. Silicon Valley. I worked for a startup, then started my own. Made my first million at 25, like my father always wanted. His laugh was hollow. I was miserable, successful, and completely alone. What changed? I stood up to him. 3 years ago. Told him I was done being controlled. Julian swirled his drink. He threatened to cut me off. I told him I didn't need his money anymore. That must have been satisfying. It was. Julian looked at her curiously. What about you? After your mother? Ayanna sighed. I tried going back to school. Got partway through a master's program, but the medical bills... She shrugged. I took whatever jobs I could find. Waitressing. Retail. The Maid agency was just the latest in a string of desperate choices. I wish I'd known. I could have helped. Would. You have? Ayanna asked honestly. If you'd known where I was? Julian considered the question. 6 months ago, probably not. I was still angry, still thought you'd abandoned me, but now everything had changed. They'd both learned the truth. They were both healing from the same wound. Julian, what are we doing here? Really? He set his glass down. I don't know. When I saw you again, mopping my floors of all things, I was furious. Then confused, then what? Hopeful, he admitted, for the first time in years. Ayana felt it too, that dangerous spark of hope, but she wasn't ready to trust it yet. "I should go to bed," she said, standing. "It's been a long day." Julian nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Good night, Ayana." At her door she paused. "Julian, thank you for standing up to your father today. For me." "I should have done it 6 years ago," he said simply. The next few weeks settled into a routine. Ayana managed Julian's business affairs during the day. Sometimes they shared quiet evenings in the library, rebuilding their friendship one conversation at a time. Julian traveled to meetings in Atlanta. Ayana coordinated from the estate, gradually learning the details of his business empire. They were careful with each other, navigating the complicated space between their past and present. Neither mentioned a future. One evening, while Julian was away at a conference, Ayana was working late in her office when her phone rang. "Ms. Brooks?" The voice was unfamiliar. "This is Marcus Taylor, Dean of English at Emory University. I'm calling about your application for our teaching fellowship." Ayana sat up straight. She'd applied months ago, a last desperate attempt to revive her academic dreams. "Yes, Dean Taylor. Thank you for calling. I'm pleased to inform you that we'd like to offer you the position. Your writing sample and recommendations were exceptional." Ayana's heart soared. Teaching at Emory. It was everything she'd once dreamed of. "The position begins next semester," Dean Taylor continued. "Would you be available to meet next week to discuss details?" "Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity." After the call ended, Ayana sat in stunned silence. Her future, her real future, the one she'd planned before everything fell apart, was suddenly within reach again, but it would mean leaving Oakwood Estate, leaving Julian, just as they were finding their way back to each other. She was still sitting at her desk, lost in thought, when Julian returned unexpectedly. He appeared in her doorway, loosening his tie. "You're still up," he observed. "Everything okay?" Ayana hesitated. "I got a call tonight from Emory University." Julian's face registered surprise, then understanding. "The teaching fellowship you mentioned. You got it?" "Yes." A complicated mix of emotions crossed Julian's face. Pride, happiness, and something that looked like loss. "Ayana, that's wonderful." His smile seemed genuine, if a little sad. "It's what you always wanted." "It starts next semester. I'd have to leave in a few weeks." Julian nodded slowly. "Of course. You'll need time to prepare, find a place closer to campus." "Julian, you have to take it," he said firmly. "This is your dream. I would never stand in the way of that." Ayana felt tears threatening, always so generous, even when it cost him. "What about us?" she asked softly. Julian crossed the room to take her hands. "We found each other again after 6 years. Atlanta isn't that far from here. We'll figure it out." But there was uncertainty in his eyes, echoing the fear in her heart. They'd just found each other again. Now another separation loomed. "I haven't accepted yet," Ayana said. "I wanted to talk to you first." Julian squeezed her hands. "Accept it. This is your chance to reclaim what was taken from you, what my father took from you." Put that way, the decision seemed clear. Yet Ayana couldn't ignore the ache in her chest at the thought of leaving Oakwood Estate, leaving Julian, just as they were rebuilding what they'd lost. "I'll call Dean Taylor tomorrow," she finally said. Julian nodded, releasing her hands. "Good. Now it's late. We should both get some rest." At her door he paused. "I'm proud of you, Ayana. I always knew you were meant for more than cleaning floors." After he left, Ayana sat on the edge of her bed, torn between joy at the opportunity and grief at what it might cost. The next morning, Julian was unusually busy. Meetings, calls, a trip into Atlanta. Ayana tried to catch him between appointments, but he seemed to be deliberately avoiding her. By evening, she was frustrated. She found him in his office, reviewing documents. "Are we going to talk about this?" she asked from the doorway. Julian looked up, his expression carefully neutral. "About your fellowship? I thought we covered it last night." "You're taking it. As you should." "That's not what I mean, and you know it." Ayana entered the office, closing the door behind her. "You've been avoiding me all day." Julian sighed, setting down his pen. I needed time to think. About what? About how to let you go again. The simple honesty of his answer took her breath away. Julian, it's fine, he interrupted. Really, I'm happy for you. This is what you deserve. Ayanna moved to sit across from him. Look at me, please. Reluctantly, Julian met her eyes. I don't want to lose you again, she said softly. Not now, not when we've just found each other. You won't lose me, we'll make it work somehow. But his voice lacked conviction, and Ayanna understood why. They both knew how easily distance could become silence, how quickly silence could become another kind of loss. What if... She hesitated, then pushed forward. What if I didn't go right away? What if I asked for a deferral just for a semester? Julian's brow furrowed. Why would you do that? Because I think we deserve time. To figure out what this is, between us. To heal properly from what happened. Hope flickered in Julian's eyes, quickly replaced by determination. No, I won't let you put your life on hold for me. Not again. It wouldn't be for you, Ayanna argued. It would be for me, for both of us. Julian stood, moving to the window. Do you know what scares me most? That you'll resent me. That years from now you'll look back and wonder what your life might have been if you hadn't gotten tangled up with me again. Ayanna stood too, following him. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. Yes, I do. She turned him to face her. Because I've already lived through losing you once, and no career, no fellowship, nothing was worth that pain. Julian's resolve seemed to waver. Ayanna, just a semester, she pressed. 3 months. To see if what we had, what we could have again, is worth fighting for. Their eyes locked, the air between them charged with possibility. You'd really consider staying? Julian asked. His voice rough with emotion. I'm considering fighting for something that matters, Ayanna answered, the way I should have 6 years ago. Julian reached for her then, his hand cupping her cheek. I don't deserve a second chance with you. Maybe not, Ayanna said with a small smile, but you've got one anyway. Julian leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. Ayanna didn't move, her heart racing as his lips met hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, a question. Then, as Ayanna's arms slid around his neck, it deepened into an answer. When they finally broke apart, Julian rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered. Not forever, just long enough for us to figure this out. Okay, Ayanna agreed, breathless. I'll call Dean Taylor tomorrow about a deferral. They stood there, holding each other, both aware that they were stepping onto uncertain ground. The past still loomed behind them. The future remained unclear. But for the first time in 6 years, Ayanna felt something she'd almost forgotten, the weightless joy of being exactly where she belonged, in Julian's arms. In a house built from loneliness, they began to build something new, something stronger than the silence that had separated them, something more enduring than the dust of their shattered memories, something like hope. Dean Taylor had been understanding about Ayanna's request for a deferral. These positions don't come along often, he'd cautioned. I can hold it for 1 semester, but not longer. I understand, Ayanna had assured him. I'll be ready in January. That had been 2 weeks ago. Now, as October painted the trees around, Oakwood Estate in fiery reds and golds, Ayanna and Julian were cautiously exploring what it meant to be together again. They took things slowly. Dinner in the garden, walks around the property, evenings reading in the library. They were rediscovering each other, the ways they'd changed, the parts that remained the same. You're more confident now, Julian observed one evening as they sat on the stone bench by the pond. More certain of yourself. Ayanna smiled. Losing everything will do that to you. You realize what matters. And I'm less impulsive, Julian said. More cautious. Too cautious sometimes, Ayanna teased, nudging his shoulder with hers. Julian captured her hand, his expression turning serious. I'm afraid of making mistakes, especially with you. Ayanna understood. Their past hung between them, not a barrier anymore, but a shadow they couldn't quite escape. We both need to stop tiptoeing, she said. We're not the same people we were. In college, that's okay. Julian nodded slowly. You're right, maybe it's time to make new memories instead of trying to recapture old ones. What did you have in mind? His smile was both nervous and determined. "A proper date, tomorrow night in Atlanta. Dinner, maybe a show. Are you asking me out, Mr. Cole?" "I believe I am, Ms. Brooks," Ayanna pretended to consider. "Well, I'll have to check with my boss. He's very demanding." Julian laughed, pulling her closer. "I have it on good authority he'll give you the night off." When he kissed her, Ayanna felt the last of her hesitation melting away. They deserved this second chance, this opportunity to build something new from the ashes of what they'd lost. The next evening, Ayanna stood in front of her closet, assessing her options. The black dress from the investor dinner was too formal. Her old blue dress too plain. A knock at her door interrupted her deliberation. Rosa stood there with a large white box. "Delivery for you?" the cook said with a knowing smile. "Mr. Cole said you might need this for tonight." Inside the box, nestled in tissue paper, was a stunning emerald green dress. Simple but elegant. Exactly Ayanna's style. A note lay on top. "You mentioned once that green was your favorite color. I remembered. No pressure to wear this, but I saw it and thought of you." Ayanna lifted the dress, touched by the gesture. Julian had always been thoughtful, even in college when they had nothing. An hour later, she stepped into the foyer where Julian waited. His eyes widened at the sight of her in the green dress. "You look beautiful," he said softly. "You clean up pretty well yourself." She straightened his tie, the same shade of green as her dress. "Coordinating already?" Julian smiled. "Some things are worth planning for." Thomas drove them into Atlanta, where Julian had reserved a table at an intimate restaurant overlooking the city. It was strange and wonderful to be out together, no pretending, no history hanging over them, just two people enjoying each other's company. "Tell me about your tech company," Ayanna said over dinner. "I've been working for you for weeks, but I still don't fully understand what you do." Julian described his secure communication platform, designed to protect sensitive information for businesses and governments. His passion was evident as he explained the technology. "It's all about keeping secrets safe," he concluded. "Ironic, given how secrets nearly destroyed us." "Maybe that's why it matters to you," Ayanna suggested. "You know the damage secrets can cause." Julian considered this. "I never thought of it that way, but you might be right." After dinner, they strolled through a nearby park, hand in hand. The October air was crisp, the city lights twinkling around them. "This feels like a dream," Ayanna admitted. 2 months ago I was barely surviving. Now I'm here, with you, wearing a beautiful dress, planning for Emory in January." "Is that still the plan?" Julian asked carefully. "Emory in January?" Ayanna looked at him. "That was our agreement. 3 months to see where this leads. Then I start the fellowship." Julian nodded, but something in his expression seemed troubled. "What's wrong?" she pressed. "Nothing. Just wondering how we'll make it work once you're teaching." "You'll be busy." "I travel often. We'll figure it out," Ayanna assured him, echoing his words from weeks ago. "Atlanta isn't far. You have an office there." "True." Julian squeezed her hand. "I'm being pessimistic, old habits." As they walked back to the car, Ayanna couldn't shake the feeling that something was bothering Julian, but the moment passed. And by the time they returned to Oakwood Estate, they were laughing again, the tension forgotten. At her door, Julian kissed her goodnight, a kiss that lingered, full of promise. "Thank you for tonight," Ayanna murmured against his lips. "For remembering the green." "I remember everything about you, Ayanna Brooks," Julian replied. "Always have." The following week brought an unexpected development. Julian received an invitation to speak at a tech conference in San Francisco, and he wanted Ayanna to join him. "It's a major industry event," he explained over breakfast. 3 days in California. You could see the city, maybe visit some of the universities there." "For you want me to come as your assistant?" Ayanna clarified. Julian hesitated. "As my date, actually, if you're comfortable with that." The idea was appealing. 3 days away from Oakwood Estate, experiencing Julian's world beyond Atlanta. "When do we leave?" Julian's smile was worth any hesitation. "Monday. I'll have Thomas arrange everything." The trip to San Francisco marked a new phase in their relationship. Checking into the luxury hotel, attending the conference opening reception, introducing Ayanna to his colleagues, Julian was proudly claiming her as part of his life. "The famous Julian Cole, actually smiling," remarked a woman at the reception. "You must be the reason." "Julian has plenty of reasons to smile," Ayanna deflected politely. "His company is thriving." "That's never made him smile before," the woman observed before moving on. Later, in their hotel suite, adjoining rooms, a gesture of respect for Ayanna's boundaries, Julian admitted the woman was right. "I've been to, say, a dozen of these events, always alone, always focused on business." He loosened his tie, looking more relaxed than Ayanna had seen him. "Having you here changes everything." Ayanna felt it too, a shift in their relationship. Here, away from Oakwood Estate and its ghosts, they were simply Julian and Ayanna, two people choosing to be together. On the second night of the conference, after Julian's keynote speech, they had dinner at a small restaurant overlooking the bay. Julian seemed distracted, checking his phone frequently. "Everything okay?" Ayanna finally asked. "Just business," he assured her, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Later that night, Ayanna woke to the sound of Julian's voice from the adjoining room. He was on the phone, his tone urgent. "How bad is it?" "No, don't tell anyone else yet. I'll handle it when I get back." When he returned to bed, Ayanna pretended to be asleep. Something was wrong, but Julian clearly wasn't ready to share it. The next morning, over breakfast, she tried again. "Julian, is there a problem at the company? I heard you on the phone last night." Julian sighed, setting down his coffee. "I was hoping to wait until we got home, but yes, there's an issue with our latest security update. A potential vulnerability." "How serious?" "Potentially very. If exploited, it could compromise our clients' data." Ayanna understood immediately. For a security company, this was catastrophic. "What can I do to help?" Julian seemed relieved by her offer. "Nothing right now. My team is working on it. We'll need to cut the trip short, though. Fly back tonight instead of tomorrow." "Of course." As they packed, Ayanna couldn't shake the feeling that Julian wasn't telling her everything. His tension seemed deeper than just a technical glitch. On the flight home, Julian worked frantically on his laptop while Ayanna tried to read. Finally, she set her book aside. "There's something you're not telling me," she said quietly. Julian looked up, shadows under his eyes. "What do you mean?" "This security issue. There's more to it, isn't there?" Julian closed his laptop slowly. "You always could read me too well, so tell me." He glanced around the private jet, ensuring they were truly alone. The vulnerability wasn't an accident, it was deliberate. Someone inside the company planted it. Ayanna's eyes widened. "Sabotage? Who would do that?" "That's what I need to find out." Julian's expression darkened. "But I have my suspicions." "Your father?" Julian nodded grimly. "He has connections in the tech world, could have recruited someone." "But why? What would he gain by damaging your company?" "Control," Julian said simply. "If my company falters, I might need his help. His connections, his money." Ayanna took his hand. "You don't need him. You'll figure this out." Julian squeezed her fingers. "Having you believe in me helps more than you know." Back at Oakwood Estate, Julian was immediately pulled into crisis management. Meetings, calls, late nights in his office. Ayanna gave him space while keeping the household running smoothly. 3 days after their return, Julian called her into his office. He looked exhausted but determined. "We found the source of the sabotage," he announced. "A programmer hired 6 months ago, Michael Chen. Did he confess?" "Not yet, but the evidence is clear. He inserted the code that created the vulnerability." Julian ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "The question is who he's working for." "Have you talked to him?" "He's disappeared. Didn't show up for work. Yesterday, his apartment is cleaned out." Ayanna sat across from Julian. "This feels too organized to be random." "Exactly." Julian pushed a file toward her. "Look at his employment history." Ayanna scanned the document, then looked up sharply. "He worked for your father's company 3 years ago, before I cut ties with my father." Julian's voice was grim. "Too much of a coincidence." "What will you do?" "Fix the vulnerability first. We're releasing a patch tonight, then find Chen and whoever is behind this." Ayanna hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering her. "Could this hurt the company long term?" Julian understood what she was really asking. You mean, could I lose everything? It's possible. If our clients lose faith in our security, we're finished. The implications hung in the air between them. Julian's entire world could collapse, and now Ayanna was part of that world. We'll get through this, she said firmly. Together, Julian smiled tiredly. There's that we again. I like the sound of it. Over the next week, Julian worked around the clock. The security patch was released, containing the immediate threat, but the damage to the company's reputation had begun. Industry blogs were running stories about the vulnerability. Clients were asking questions. Ayanna did what she could, managing Julian's schedule, fielding calls, ensuring he ate and slept. She was his rock, his sanctuary from the storm. One evening, as they sat in the library, Julian reviewing damage, control strategies, Ayanna researching tech industry crises for precedents, Mrs. Winters appeared at the door. "Mr. Cole," she said stiffly, "your father is here." Julian's head snapped up. "What?" "He's waiting in the foyer, says it's urgent." Julian and Ayanna exchanged looks. "I'll see him," Julian decided. "In my office. Alone." Ayanna nodded, understanding. This confrontation needed to happen without her presence. 30 minutes later, Julian found her in her quarters. His face was tight with anger. "He had the audacity to offer help," Julian said without preamble. "Said he has connections who could make this problem go away if I was willing to be reasonable." Reasonable meaning what? Meaning letting him back into my life, into the company. Julian paced the room. He didn't admit to anything, of course, but he didn't seem surprised about the sabotage either. "What did you tell him?" "To get out of my house." Julian stopped pacing, his eyes meeting hers. "He mentioned you." Ayanna tensed. "What about me?" "Said I was making the same mistake twice, letting a woman cloud my judgment." Despite herself, Ayanna felt a flicker of doubt. Was she clouding Julian's judgment? Was her presence in his life making this situation worse? Julian seemed to read her thoughts. "Don't," he said firmly. "Don't let him get into your head, that's what he wants. But what if he's right? What if being with me is making things harder for you?" "Ayanna." Julian crossed the room to take her hands. "You are the one thing in my life that makes sense, right? Now the one person I trust completely." The conviction in his voice silenced her doubts, at least for the moment. "What's next?" she asked. "We fight back. My team is tracing Chen's movements, his communications. When we find proof of who he's working with, we go public." Ayanna nodded. "And in the meantime," Julian's expression softened. "In the meantime, we don't let my father win. Not again." The next morning, Ayanna woke to find Julian already gone. A note on her bedside table explained he'd left for an emergency meeting in Atlanta, back tonight. "Don't worry. Love, Jet," was the first time he'd written love since they'd reunited. Ayanna traced the word with her finger, smiling despite the circumstances. She spent the morning catching up on correspondence, then decided to use the rare quiet day to explore parts of the estate she hadn't seen before. The gardens were beautiful in autumn, the grounds expansive. Near the edge of the property, Ayanna discovered a small cottage, almost hidden among the trees. Curious, she approached. The door was unlocked. Inside, she found a simple, comfortable space, a living area with a fireplace, a small kitchen, a bedroom. Everything was dusty but well maintained. "It was the groundskeeper's cottage," Mrs. Winters' voice came from behind her, "before Mr. Cole renovated the estate." Ayanna turned, startled. "I'm sorry, I was just exploring." Mrs. Winters studied her with a less hostile expression than usual. "Mr. Cole had it preserved. Said it might be useful someday." "It's lovely," Ayanna said honestly. Mrs. Winters seemed to be debating something internally. Finally, she said, "Mr. Cole has changed since you arrived." Ayanna waited, unsure where this was going. "I've known him since he was a boy," Mrs. Winters continued. "After college, he became cold, distant, like his father." "Julian is nothing like his father," Ayanna defended. "He was becoming like him," Mrs. Winters corrected, "until you returned." The admission surprised Ayanna. "Why are you telling me this?" Mrs. Winters straightened her already perfect posture. "Because Mr. Cole Sr. is visiting the estate again right now. He arrived after Mr. Cole left this morning." Ayanna's stomach dropped. "Where is he?" in Mr. Cole's office. Looking through his files, Mrs. Winter's disapproval was evident. "I thought you should know." "Thank you," Ayanna said, already moving toward the door. She hurried back to the main house, mind racing. What was William Cole looking for? What should she do? Entering through the kitchen to avoid being seen, Ayanna found Rosa. "Mr. Cole Sr. is here," the cook confirmed in a whisper. "Showed up right after Julian left. Said he was expected." "Where is he now?" "Study, last I heard. Thomas called Julian, but he's in meetings all day." Ayanna made a decision. "I'm going to see what he's doing." Rosa looked alarmed. "Be careful. That man is dangerous." Ayanna moved quietly through the house to Julian's study. The door was ajar. She could hear William Cole moving around inside, opening drawers, rustling papers. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open. "Looking for something, Mr. Cole?" William turned, not even pretending to be embarrassed at being caught. He held several files in his hands. "Miss Brooks, just reviewing some company materials Julian asked me to look over." "Julian didn't ask you to do anything," Ayanna said evenly. "He's in Atlanta and you're trespassing." William smiled coldly. "Technically, this is still Cole property. I financed the purchase." That's not how Julian tells it. William set the files down with deliberate care. "My son has always had a selective memory, especially when it comes to what he owes me." "The only thing he owes you is distance," Ayanna said. "Please leave, now." William studied her, a calculating look in his eyes. "You really think you know him, don't you? The real Julian?" "Better than you ever did." William's laugh was cruel. "The boy you knew in college is gone, Miss Brooks. I made sure of that. The man he is now, the successful, ruthless businessman, that's my creation." "You're wrong," Ayanna insisted. "Julian succeeded despite you, not because of you." "Is that what he tells himself?" William moved toward her. "Did he tell you about the startup he crushed last year? The competitor he drove into bankruptcy? The people he fired for questioning his decisions?" Each accusation hit Ayanna like a physical blow. Julian had mentioned becoming harder, colder, but how far had that transformation gone? "You're lying," she said, but doubt crept into her voice. William noticed. "Ask him. See how he reacts." He brushed past her toward the door. "You think you're different from all the others. Special. The one he truly loves." He paused in the doorway. "Just remember, when things get difficult, Julian Cole protects himself first. Always has. Always will. Just wait until this security crisis truly hits. You'll see what he's really made of." After he left, Ayanna stood in the study, shaken. She knew William was manipulating her, playing on her insecurities, but a seed of doubt had been planted. How well did she really know the man Julian had become? Julian returned late that night, looking grim but determined. "I heard my father paid a visit," he said, when he found Ayanna waiting in the library. "Mrs. Winters told you?" Julian nodded. "She said you confronted him. That was brave and unnecessary." "He was going through your files," Ayanna explained, "looking for something. Probably information about our security protocols, evidence of the sabotage." Julian sank into a chair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "Did he say anything to you?" Ayanna hesitated. "He tried to make me doubt you, said things about who you've become." Julian's expression hardened. "Like what?" "That you've crushed competitors, driven companies into bankruptcy." Julian was silent for a long moment. "Business is complicated, Ayanna. Sometimes tough decisions have to be made." His non-denial troubled her. "Is it true, then?" "Not the way he described it, I'm sure." Julian met her gaze directly. "Have I been ruthless at times?" "Yes." "Have I made choices I'm not proud of?" "Also yes." The tech world isn't for the faint of heart. Ayanna processed this. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I'm not proud of some of the things I've done," Julian admitted. "Because I was afraid you'd look at me differently." "I just want the truth, Julian. All of it." Julian stood, moving to the window. "The truth is, after what my father did, to us I became harder, More like him than I wanted to admit. Success became everything. If that meant stepping on others to get there, so be it. The confession hung in the air between them. And now? Ayana asked quietly. Julian turned back to her. Now I'm trying to be better. Since you came back into my life, I've been remembering the person I wanted to be, the person you believed I could be. Ayana wanted to believe him, but William's warnings echoed in her mind. Julian, if we're going to have any chance, there can't be secrets between us, not anymore. No more secrets, he agreed. I promise. But even as he said it, Ayana sensed there was something he wasn't telling her, something about the security crisis, about his emergency meetings in Atlanta. That night, lying in bed, Ayana faced the reality that loving Julian meant accepting his complexities, his flaws, his mistakes. The question was whether the man he'd become was still the man she could love, and whether, when tested, he would choose her or protect himself, as his father had predicted. The answer came sooner than expected. The next morning, news broke about the security vulnerability in Julian's company. Tech blogs were running the story. Business channels reported that several major clients were considering cancelling their contracts. Julian spent the day locked in his office, on calls with his legal team, his PR firm, his board of directors. Ayana brought him food he didn't eat, coffee he barely touched. By evening, the crisis had escalated. A reporter had somehow obtained emails suggesting the company had known about the vulnerability before releasing the software update. That's impossible, Julian told Ayana when she brought him the news. We only discovered it after the release. Could the emails be fake? Julian's expression was grim. They'd have to be, but they look convincing. The next blow came at midnight, a call from Julian's chief financial officer. Investors were panicking. Stock was plummeting. The board was calling for a leadership change. Julian hung up and turned to Ayana, who had stayed by his side through it all. They want me to step down, he said, his voice hollow. Temporarily, they say, until this blows over. You can't, Ayana protested. This is your company, your vision. If I don't, we could lose everything. The investors, the clients, all of it. Ayana took his hands. There has to be another way. What about finding Chen, proving he planted the vulnerability on someone else's orders? Julian's eyes suddenly sharpened. You're right. We need to find Chen. He made another call, this one, to a private investigator he'd hired. After a brief conversation, Julian hung up, looking more hopeful than he had all day. They found something. Chen made contact with someone the day before he disappeared. A meeting at a hotel in downtown Atlanta. Who? Julian's expression turned grim. My father's assistant, James Roberts. The pieces were falling into place. William Cole was behind it all. The sabotage, the leaked emails, perhaps even the boards. Sudden loss of confidence. What now? Ayana asked. Julian's face hardened with determination. Now we fight back. I'm not losing my company. And I'm not letting my father win. Not again. His phone rang again. The head of his legal team. Julian listened, his expression shifting from determination to shock. When? Are you sure? Yes, I understand. Thank you for telling me. He hung up slowly, looking stunned. Julian? Ayana prompted. What is it? The SEC has opened an investigation, he said quietly. Into me. Allegations of insider trading, financial impropriety. That's ridiculous, it gets worse. Julian met her eyes. They have evidence. Bank transfers, emails, all fake, but convincing enough to warrant an investigation. Ayana felt sick. This wasn't just about the company anymore. Julian could face criminal charges. Your father is behind this too? It has to be. He has the connections, the resources. Julian's laugh was bitter. He always said he'd make me regret cutting him out of my life. Ayana paced the room thinking. We need to prove it's him. Find evidence that links him to Chen, to the fake emails, all of it. Julian nodded slowly. My team is working on it, but it will take time. Time we don't have. Then what's the alternative? Julian was quiet for a long moment. There's one option. Not ideal, but it might save the company, stop the investigation. What? I could accept my father's offer. Let him back in, give him what he wants. Ayana stared at him in disbelief. After everything he's done? Julian, he's the reason we lost 6 years together. He's trying to destroy you now. I know, Julian said grimly. But if it's a choice between my pride and losing everything— It's not just about pride, Ayana protested. It's about right and wrong. It's about not letting him control you again. Julian stood, agitated. You don't understand the stakes, Ayana. This isn't just about me. Hundreds of people work for me. Their livelihoods, their families, all at risk. So you'd sacrifice yourself, go back to being under his thumb. If that's what it takes to protect what I've built, yes. Ayana felt something cold settle in her stomach. This was the moment. William Cole had predicted, the moment Julian would choose to protect what was his regardless of the cost. And what about us, she asked quietly. Where do I fit in this new arrangement with your father? Julian wouldn't meet her eyes. He made it clear that you're part of the negotiation, that we— He couldn't finish, that we can't be together. Ayana supplied, her voice steady despite the pain lancing through her. That's his condition, isn't it? Julian's silence was answer enough. Ayana felt tears threatening but held them back. So after everything, finding each other again, learning the truth these past weeks together, you're willing to give us up? Again? It's not that simple. It is that simple, Ayana cut him off. Your father is offering you a devil's bargain. And you're considering taking it. Julian finally looked at her, his eyes tormented. What choice do I have? Fight back. Stand up to him. Trust that the truth will come out. And if it doesn't? If I lose everything? Ayana moved closer, taking his face in her hands. Then we start over, together, the way we should have 6 years ago. For a moment she thought she'd reached him, saw the struggle in his eyes, the desire to believe her. Then his phone rang again. Another crisis, another piece of his empire in, say, jeopardy. And Ayana knew with a cold certainty that she was losing him all over again, not to silence this time, but to fear. To the man William Cole had shaped him to be, the man who would sacrifice love for security, heart for success. As Julian took the call, turning away from her, Ayana made a decision of her own. She would not wait around to be abandoned again. This time she would be the one to walk away. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would be the wake-up call Julian needed, to remember what truly mattered. The morning sun filtered through Ayana's bedroom window as she packed her suitcase. Each item she folded represented another piece of the dream she was leaving behind, the dream of a second chance with Julian. Are you sure about this? Rosa asked from the doorway. The cook had become a friend over the past months, a confidant. I can't stay and watch him surrender to his father, Ayana said, her voice steadier than she felt. Not again. He's under tremendous pressure, the company, the investigation. I know. Ayana closed the suitcase with a decisive click. But we promised each other no more secrets, no more letting his father come between us. If Julian breaks— That promise now, what hope do we have? Rosa sighed. Where will you go? A hotel for now, then back to my apartment in the city. It's tiny, but the lease isn't up yet. Ayana managed a small smile. I'll be fine, Rosa. I survived losing Julian once, I can do it again. But even as she said the words, Ayana wasn't sure they were true. Finding Julian again, learning the truth about their separation, falling back in love with the man he'd become, only to lose him to his father's manipulation once more. The pain was almost unbearable. I'll call a cab, Rosa said, recognizing Ayana's determination. Thank you. And please don't tell Julian where I've gone. Not right away. After Rosa left, Ayana sat at the small desk in her room and wrote a letter. The irony wasn't lost on her. Another letter, another goodbye, but this time she would make sure Julian received it. Julian, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I won't stand by and watch you surrender to your father, not after everything we've been through, everything we've learned about what he did to us. 6 years ago, we lost each other because we believed the lies we were told. This time we're losing each other because of choices we're making with open eyes. I understand your company means everything to you. I understand you feel responsible for your employees, your investors. But at what cost, Julian? At what point? Do you stop sacrificing your happiness, your integrity, your heart for your father's approval. You told me once that after college, you became more like him than you wanted to admit. Now you're proving him right, choosing security over love, control over trust, fear over hope. I believe in you. I believe in the man I fell in love with in college, the man who reads poetry in the dark and traces dreams on my skin, the man who promised to build a life with me. That man wouldn't surrender to manipulation and fear. That man would fight for what matters most. I love you, Julian. I never stopped. But I won't watch you become your father's son again. Find me when you remember who you really are. Ayanna. She sealed the letter in an envelope, wrote Julian's name on the front, and placed it on her pillow. Then she picked up her suitcase and walked out of Oakwood Estate without looking back. Julian sat in his office, staring at the contract his father had sent over. The terms were clear. William Cole would provide evidence clearing Julian of the SEC allegations, help restore investor confidence, and bring his considerable influence to bear on the security crisis, in exchange for 40% ownership of the company and Julian's agreement to end his relationship with Ayanna. The choice seemed impossible. Lose his company or lose Ayanna. Again. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Mrs. Winters entered, her expression even more severe than usual. "Mr. Cole, I thought you should know that Miss Brooks has left the estate." Julian stood abruptly. "What, when?" "About an hour ago. She took a cab." Mrs. Winters handed him an envelope. "She left this in her room." Julian took the envelope, his hand shaking slightly. "Did she say where she was going?" "No, sir, but she asked Rosa not to tell you. I thought you should know anyway." After Mrs. Winters left, Julian sank back into his chair and opened the letter. Each word hit him like a physical blow. Ayanna was gone. She had walked away rather than watch him surrender to his father, and she was right. Julian crumpled the contract in his fist, sudden clarity washing over him. What was he doing? How had he come so close to repeating the mistakes of the past? His phone rang, his father's ringtone. Julian stared at it for a moment, then answered. "Have you made your decision?" William Cole asked without preamble. "Yes," Julian replied, his voice cold. "The answer is no, I won't give you my company. And I won't give up Ayanna, not again." "Don't be a fool," his father snapped. "You're facing an SEC investigation. Your stock is plummeting. Your board is ready to force you out." "All because of you," Julian countered. "Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? The sabotage, the fake emails, the SEC tips, it's all you, trying to force me back under your control." "I'm trying." "To save you from yourself," William insisted. "That girl clouded your judgment in college, and she's doing it again now." "No, father. You're the one who clouded my judgment. Made me believe success was worth any price. Made me believe I had to choose between love and achievement." Julian's voice strengthened with each word. "I'm done letting you dictate my life." "You'll lose everything," William warned. "I've made sure of it." "Maybe," Julian conceded. "But I won't lose myself, not again." He paused. "And father? Stay away from Oakwood Estate. You're not welcome here anymore." He hung up, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. The crisis wasn't over. Far from it. But for the first time since it began, Julian knew exactly what he was fighting for, and who he was fighting for. He had to find Ayanna. Ayanna sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at her phone. No calls from Julian, no texts. It had been 6 hours since she'd left Oakwood Estate. Maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe Julian had already signed his father's contract, chosen his company over their love. Maybe this time, their separation was permanent. Knock at the door startled her. Probably housekeeping, though she'd put out the "Do Not Disturb" sign. "Just a minute," she called, wiping away tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. When she opened the door, Thomas, Julian's driver, stood there. "Ms. Brooks," he said with a nod. "Mr. Cole sent me to find you." Ayanna's heart jumped. "How did you know where I was?" Thomas looked embarrassed. "Rosa told me she was worried about you." "What does Julian want?" "He asked me to give you this." Thomas handed her an envelope, thicker than the one she'd left for Julian. "Thank you," Ayanna said, taking it, "and he asked me to tell you he'll be at the cottage at sunset, if you want to talk." After Thomas left, Ayanna opened the envelope. with trembling fingers. Inside was a thick stack of papers, legal documents, emails, bank records, and a note in Julian's handwriting. "Ayanna, you were right. About everything. I almost made the biggest mistake of my life. Again. These documents are copies of everything my team has gathered, proving my father's involvement in the sabotage. I'm taking them to the SEC, the board, the press, everyone. I'm fighting back. I don't know if I'll win. I don't know if I'll still have a company tomorrow, but I know I can't lose you again. Meet me at the cottage at sunset if you're willing. To hear me out. No pressure, no expectations, just the truth, all my love, Julian." Ayanna read the note twice, her mind racing. Julian was fighting back, standing up to his father, risking everything for her. She looked at her watch. Sunset was in 2 hours. The cottage looked different in the golden light of evening. Someone had cleaned it, lit a fire in the fireplace, placed fresh flowers on the small table. It looked like a home, a beginning. Julian was waiting outside, sitting on a wooden bench, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. He stood when he saw her approaching. "You came," he said simply. "I got your note." They stood awkwardly, the air between them heavy with things unsaid. "I told my father no." Julian finally broke the silence, tore up his contract, told him to stay away from Oakwood. "I saw the documents you sent, evidence of what he did." Julian nodded. "My team has been building the case for days. I was going to use it as leverage against him, force better terms." He laughed bitterly. "Still playing his game even when I thought I was fighting back. And now I'm done playing games." Julian gestured to the cottage. "Walk with me?" They moved toward the cottage, maintaining a careful distance between them. "I turned everything over to the SEC this afternoon," Julian continued. "Every piece of evidence linking my father to Chen, to the sabotage, to the fake emails. What did they say? That it's compelling. That they're shifting their investigation to focus on him." Julian smiled grimly. "My father called, raging. Said I'd regret this, that he'd destroy me completely now." "Are you scared?" Julian considered the question. "Of losing the company? Yes, of starting over, maybe a little." He looked at her directly. "Of losing you again. Terrified." Ayanna's heart squeezed. "Julian, let me finish, please." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "When you left this morning, it was like waking up from a nightmare. I suddenly saw everything clearly. I've spent 6 years building a company, accumulating wealth, achieving success, all to prove something to my father, to prove I didn't need him." "There's nothing wrong with success," Ayanna said softly. "No, but there's something wrong with the price I was willing to pay for it." Julian stepped closer. "When my father offered his deal, do you know what scared me most? Not losing the company, not the investigation. It was the thought of losing you again." "Then why did you even consider his offer?" "Because I'm my father's son in more ways than I want to admit," Julian confessed. "I've spent years believing that showing vulnerability is weakness, that emotions cloud judgment, that sacrifices must be made for success." He took her hands. "But you remind me of who I wanted to be before he poisoned my thinking. The man who believed in love, in trust, in building something meaningful, not just profitable." Ayanna felt tears threatening. "And who are you now, Julian? Who do you want to be?" "A man worthy of your love," he said simply. "A man who fights for what matters. A man who doesn't repeat the mistakes of the past." The sincerity in his eyes made her breath catch. "I don't know what happens next," Julian continued. "The company might survive, or it might not. I might have to start over completely. But whatever comes, I want to face it with you. If you'll give me another chance." Ayanna looked down at their joined hands. "How do I know you won't choose security over us again the next time there's a crisis?" "You don't," Julian admitted. "All I can offer is a promise to try, to remember what matters most, to be worthy of your trust." He released her hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "This isn't a proposal," he said quickly, seeing her expression. "Not yet. We have too much to rebuild first." He opened the box to reveal a simple silver key. "It's to the cottage," Julian explained. "I had it renovated. Just basic updates, nothing fancy. It's yours if you want it. A place of your own on the estate. No strings attached. Ayana took the box, confused. I don't understand. I'm offering you independence, Julian said. The fellowship at Emory starts in January. That's 2 months away. You could stay here in your own space while we figure out in us whether there can be an us again. The gesture touched her deeply. Julian wasn't asking her to give up her dreams, her independence. He was offering her space to make her own choices. And, if I decide there's no future for us, she asked quietly, then the cottage is still yours for as long as you need it, and I'll respect your decision. Julian's smile was sad but determined. But I hope you'll give us a chance. A real one this time. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Ayana looked at the cottage, at the key in her hand, at the man standing before her, a man who had finally chosen love over fear. I need time, she said finally. To think, to be sure. Julian nodded, accepting her answer without pushing. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. As Ayana turned to leave, Julian called after her. Ayana, whatever you decide, thank you for reminding me who I really am. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and walked back toward the main house, the key clutched tightly in her hand. The next morning, Ayana woke early in her old room at Oakwood Estate. She decided to stay one more night before making any decisions. Turning on her phone, she found dozens of notifications, news alerts, texts from friends, emails. Frowning, she opened the first alert. Breaking. Cole Technologies CEO exposes corporate sabotage plot. She quickly scanned the article. Julian had gone public with everything. The sabotage, his father's manipulation, the false SEC allegations. He'd released all the evidence to the press. More headlines followed. William Cole under investigation for corporate espionage. SEC shifts. Focus from son to father in Cole. Technologies probe. Tech industry rallies behind Julian Cole as whistleblower. Stunned, Ayana made her way downstairs, where she found Rosa in the kitchen. Have you seen the news? The cook asked, eyes wide. Just now. Has Julian... He's been on calls all night, Rosa said. The press, the board, investors, it's been chaos. Ayana hesitated. Should I go to him? Rosa smiled knowingly. I think he'd appreciate that very much. Ayana found Julian in his office, looking exhausted but somehow lighter. He was on the phone but waved her in. Yes, I understand. Thank you for your support. We'll talk soon. He hung up and smiled tiredly at Ayana. Good morning. You did. It, she said, gesturing to his computer screen where more headlines scrolled. You exposed everything. It was the only way, Julian said simply. My father thrives in the shadows. I decided to turn on all the lights. What's happening now? Julian ran a hand through his disheveled hair. The SEC has officially dropped their investigation against me and opened one into my father. 3. Board members who were pressuring me to step down have resigned. Apparently they were on my father's payroll all along. And the company? Stock is actually up. Turns out investors respect transparency and courage more than they fear bad publicity. Julian's smile turned rueful. Who knew? Ayana sat across from him. How are you feeling? Exhausted, relieved. He met her eyes. Hopeful. The word hung between them, full of possibility. I've been thinking about your offer, Ayana said. The cottage? Julian's expression turned carefully neutral. And I'd like to stay until January, when the fellowship starts. She took a deep breath. And I'd like to see where this goes. Us. The hope in Julian's eyes turned to joy. Really? Really? Ayana reached across the desk to take his hand. But I have conditions. Name them. Complete honesty. No more secrets, even when it's difficult. Even when you think you're protecting me. Julian nodded solemnly. Agreed. And I keep my independence. The fellowship matters to me. My career matters to me. Of course, Julian said immediately. I would never ask you to give that up. And finally, Ayana continued, we take it slow. Rebuild what was broken, learn who we are now. Julian squeezed her hand. I think those are very reasonable conditions, Ms. Brooks. His phone buzzed with another call. But Julian ignored it. "Don't you need to get that?" Ayana asked. "No," Julian said firmly. "Some things are more important than business calls." It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes about the changes in Julian, about the man he was choosing to be. 2 weeks later, Ayana moved into the cottage. Julian had kept his word about the renovations. They were minimal, practical, allowing her to make the space her own. The crisis at Cole Technologies had largely subsided. Julian's transparency had won over most critics. The SEC investigation into William Cole was proceeding, with more evidence emerging daily of his years of manipulation and control. William himself had disappeared to his villa in Switzerland, issuing death threats through his lawyers, but keeping a low profile as his reputation unraveled. Julian and Ayana settled into a new routine. She spent her days preparing for the Emory Fellowship, reading, writing. He ran his company, now with a renewed focus on ethical leadership. In the evenings, they often met at the cottage or the main house, sharing meals, conversations, rediscovering each other without the shadow of the past hanging over them. One evening, as they walked the grounds of Oakwood Estate, Julian seemed distracted. "Something on your mind?" Ayana asked. "I had a call today. From my mother's sister, my Aunt Catherine." Ayana was surprised. Julian rarely mentioned his mother, who had died when he was a teenager. "She said my father has been calling relatives, trying to rally the family against me." Julian's laugh held no humor. "Apparently I'm the ungrateful son who betrayed the family name." "I'm sorry," Ayana said softly. Julian shook his head. "The surprising part is most of the family is siding with me. Turns out my father has alienated more than just his son over the years." "That must feel validating." "It does. But it also made me realize something." Julian stopped walking, turning to face her. "I've spent so much of my life defining myself in relation to my father, either trying to please him or trying to prove him wrong. It's time I figured out who I am without that shadow." Ayana smiled, touching his cheek. "I think you already know who you are, Julian. You just needed to remember." He leaned into her touch. "Having you back in my life has been like finding a missing piece of myself, the best piece." As the weeks passed, their relationship deepened. The cottage became a sanctuary for both of them, neutral ground where they could be simply Julian and Ayana, not employer and employee, not millionaire and scholar, not a man, haunted by his father and a woman recovering from loss. By December, with the Emory Fellowship looming in January, they faced the question of what came next. "I've been thinking," Julian said one evening as they sat by the cottage fireplace, "about after you started Emory." Ayana felt a flutter of nervousness. "Oh?" "The commute from here to campus would be brutal," Julian began. "And you'll need to be close for office hours, faculty meetings, all of that." "I've been looking at apartments near campus," Ayana admitted. "I know." Julian took a deep breath. "What if we looked together?" Ayana stared at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if I got a place in Atlanta too? Not to live together," added quickly. "Not yet, but to be close, to continue building what we've started here. What about Oakwood, your company?" "I can run the company from anywhere. Technology has its advantages." Julian's smile was both nervous and hopeful. "And Oakwood isn't going anywhere. We can come back on weekends, holidays." Ayana considered the offer. It was a big step. Julian, restructuring his life to be near her to support her career. "You'd do that? Move to Atlanta part-time for me?" "In a heartbeat," Julian said without hesitation. "Ayana, these past months have shown me what really matters. And it's not a mansion, or a corner office, or my father's approval. It's having someone to share it all with, someone who sees the real me." Tears pricked Ayana's eyes. "When did you become so wise?" "When I almost lost you. Twice." Julian took her hands. "I don't want to make that mistake a third time." As Christmas approached, Oakwood Estate transformed. Julian insisted on decorations, a massive tree in the main hall, lights strung along the pathways. Even the cottage got its own small tree, which they decorated together one snowy evening. It was during this time that Ayana finally moved the last of her things from her tiny apartment in the city to the cottage. The place was truly hers now. Books, lining the shelves, her mother's quilt on the bed, photos on the mantel, and yet she found herself spending more and more nights at the main house, in Julian's arms. On Christmas Eve, they exchanged simple gifts by the library fire. Ayanna gave Julian a first-edition Langston Hughes collection, a reminder of their college days. Julian gave her a delicate silver bracelet with a key charm. "To remind you that you'll always have a home here," he explained as he fastened it around her wrist. "No matter where your career takes you." Later that night, as they lay tangled in Julian's bed, Ayanna finally asked the question that had been on her mind. "Do you ever regret it? Exposing your father, risking everything?" Julian considered this, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "No," he said finally. "For the first time in my adult life, I feel free. Like I'm finally living my own life, not the one he designed for me. And the company? The crisis? Sometimes the best things are born from chaos," Julian said thoughtfully. "The company is stronger now, more transparent, more ethical. I'm proud of what we're building." Ayanna rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I'm proud of you." Julian kissed the top of her head. "I have something else for you. A surprise for tomorrow." "Another Christmas present?" "Julian, we agreed to keep it simple. It's not exactly a present," he said mysteriously, "more of a revelation." The next morning, after opening the few gifts under the tree, Julian led Ayanna to his study. "Remember when you first found those letters I wrote you?" he asked, opening a drawer. "In his desk." Ayanna nodded. How could she forget? It was the moment everything had changed between them. "I kept writing them," Julian admitted, pulling out a stack of papers, "even after we found each other again, whenever I couldn't sleep or when I was traveling or when things got complicated with my father and the company." He handed her a stack, dozens of letters, all addressed to her. "You can read them whenever you want," Julian said. "Or never, they're yours now." Ayanna held the letters, touched beyond words. "Thank you. There's one more I'd like you to read now, though." Julian handed her a single envelope. "I wrote it last night." Curious, Ayanna opened it. "My dearest Ayanna, tomorrow you'll begin packing for your move to Atlanta. Tomorrow we'll start planning our new routines, our separate apartments, our lives apart, but together. But tonight, on this Christmas Eve, I want to tell you what these past months have meant to me. When you walked back into my life, literally mopping the floors of my loneliness, I thought it was cruel fate. Another chance to feel the pain of losing you. Another reminder of what my father took from us. I was wrong. It was a gift. A chance to right old wrongs. A chance to become the man I was always meant to be, not in spite of my father, but for myself, for you. You asked me once who I am now, who I want to be. The answer is simple. I want to be a man worthy of your love, a man who values truth over comfort, courage over safety, love over control. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if your fellowship will lead to a professorship, if my company will continue to thrive, if we'll find our way back to the dreams we once shared. But I know this. Whatever comes, I want to face it with you, not from separate apartments, or separate lives, but together, truly together. I'm not asking for an answer now. January is still our plan. But know that when you're ready, whether that's a month from now or a year, I'll be ready too. To build something new, something stronger than silence, something more enduring than dust. All my love, now and always, Julian." Ayanna looked up from the letter, her vision blurred with tears. "Julian." "Too much?" he asked, suddenly uncertain. "Too soon?" "No," she said, rising to wrap her arms around him. "Perfect timing." Julian held her close, his voice rough with emotion. "I love you, Ayanna Brooks. I never stopped." "I love you too," she whispered against his chest. "Always have." Outside, snow began to fall, covering Oakwood Estate in a blanket of white. Inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Ayanna and Julian held their future. A future built not on the dust of shattered memories, but on the solid foundation of truth, trust, and second chances. A future where silence had no place, where old wounds could finally heal, where love once lost was found again, stronger, deeper, and unafraid. 3 months later, on a crisp spring morning, Julian stood in Ayana's faculty office at Emory, helping her arrange books on the shelves. "Professor Brooks," he said with a proud smile. "It has a nice ring to it." Ayana laughed, adjusting the nameplate on her desk. "Visiting Professor Brooks, technically, but I'll take it." Her fellowship had started successfully. Her first classes were going well. And true to his word, Julian had found an apartment in Atlanta, just 10 minutes from campus, while maintaining Oakwood Estate as their weekend retreat. "Have you read today's paper?" Julian asked, handing her the business section. The headline made Ayana grin. "William Cole charged with securities fraud, corporate espionage." "Justice at last," she said, skimming the article. Julian's expression was more complex, satisfaction mixed with old pain. "He'll probably get a slap on the wrist. Men like my father usually do, but his reputation is destroyed. His control over you is broken. That's the real victory." Julian nodded, pulling her into his arms. "You're right. As usual." A knock at the open door interrupted them. A student stood there, looking anxious. "Professor Brooks." "Sorry to interrupt, but I had a question about the assignment." "Of course," Ayana said, stepping away from Julian. "Come in." Julian gathered his coat. "I'll let you work. Dinner at 7. "Perfect." She kissed him quickly. "Love you." "Love you more," he replied, a ritual they'd established. As Julian left Ayana's office, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here, the misunderstandings, the lost years, the pain, and the extraordinary chance to begin again. Outside, the campus buzzed with activity. Students hurried to classes, professors debated theories. Life moved forward, as it always did. Julian checked his phone. Messages from the office, updates on new projects, questions needing answers. His company had not just survived the crisis, but emerged stronger, more focused on creating technology that connected people rather than isolating them. Just as he was about to call his assistant, another message came through. From the realtor he'd been working with, "Found the perfect place. Historic home near campus. Room for a library and a home office. Available to view today." Julian smiled, tucking the phone away. Not yet, but soon. When the time was right, he'd show Ayana. And maybe, just maybe, they'd finally build the life they'd dreamed of all those years ago. A life where dust turned to desire and silence gave way to truth. A life built on love. The end.